Welcome to the Part S channel. Today, we explain Prophet Samuel 2, chapter 23 in a clear and simple way, step by step. Okay, let's dive into this. We have got a truly fascinating chapter ahead of us today. It is essentially a profound retrospective. We are looking back at a legendary king and the incredible individuals who helped him build his kingdom from the absolute ground up.
So who actually were King David's greatest warriors, and what were his final prophetic words? That is the central question we're exploring in today's Explainer. Just to give you a quick bit of context on exactly where we are in the story right now, King David is nearing the very end of his life and his reign. The fierce battles, those long years spent on the run, the establishment of Jerusalem, all of that is mostly behind him now. What we are reading here in chapter 23 is literally the culmination of his life's work. We are going to look at his final, beautifully poetic reflections on leadership, and then we step right onto the battlefield to read the official roster of the absolute greatest, most elite warriors who stood by his side.
Here's our step-by-step roadmap for today. We'll walk right through the Hebrew text sequentially, from verse 1 to 39. We'll cover David's final poem, meet the elite three, slow down for a story at the Well of Bethlehem, look at Benaiah's exploits, review the broader list of the 30 warriors, and finally wrap up with practical takeaways.
All right, section 1, David's last words. The chapter opens in verse 1 by explicitly framing this as the last words of David, the son of Jesse. It describes him as the man exalted by the Most High and the sweet psalmist of Israel. Right away, this sets a very formal, deeply respectful tone. This is his definitive statement on his life. Then in verse 2, he makes this incredibly powerful claim. He says, "The Spirit of the Lord spoke through me, his word was on my tongue." It's absolutely crucial to grasp the simple meaning here. David is establishing that this final poem isn't just his own musings. It's a direct oracle from God. It's divine inspiration. As we read these next few verses, we are meant to understand that the God of Israel, the Rock of Israel, is speaking these truths directly through David's reflections.
Moving right into verses 3 and 4, we hit the absolute core of this divine message. The text forces us to consider what a genuinely good, righteous leader actually looks like. David says that a leader who rules over men must be just, ruling in the fear of God. And then, he uses this brilliant, simple metaphor. He compares a just ruler to the light of the morning, when the sun rises. But not just any morning, specifically a cloudless morning that makes the green grass spring up from the earth after a heavy rain. I mean, think about what that really implies. A just, God-fearing leader brings warmth, life, clarity, and growth to his people, exactly like the morning sun brings life to a field.
Now, in verses 5 through 7, David contrasts this beautiful ideal of leadership with its exact opposite. First, he reflects on his own house. He notes that God has made an everlasting covenant with him, this secure, ordered promise of salvation. But then he pivots to talk about worthless men, or wicked men. He compares them to thorns that are just tossed away. You can't gather thorns with your bare hands, right? They'll cut you right up. To deal with them, you literally have to use an iron tool or the shaft of a spear, and ultimately they are burned up with fire right where they lie. The simple, everyday lesson here is that righteous leadership is established and protected by God, whereas wickedness is inherently harmful, completely unapproachable, and doomed to be destroyed.
Okay, section 2, the three mighty men.
Let's move to and see how this builds. Because starting in verse 8, the text takes a sudden, really sharp turn. We transition straight from this elevated spiritual poetry directly into a gritty, intense military catalog. The text starts listing the specific names and the frankly unbelievable battlefield feats of David's most elite soldiers, the guys who actually put boots on the ground and helped him secure the kingdom. Verses 8 through 12 introduces to the absolute top tier, a super exclusive group known simply as the Three. First up is Josheb-Basshebeth, a Takamonite, which just tells us his family lineage. He was the chief of the captains. The text actually says he raised his spear against 800 men and killed them in a single encounter. Just wild. Second is Eleazar, the son of Dodo the Ahohite. The text describes this intense battle where the men of Israel retreated from the Philistines. But Eleazar, he didn't run. He stood his ground and struck down the Philistines until he was so physically exhausted that his hand literally cramped and froze, or cleaved, right to his sword. And the text notes that the Lord brought a great victory that day. Third is Shammah, the son of Agag the Harite. The Philistines had banded together at a plot of ground full of lentils. The Israeli troops fled again, but Shammah took his stand right smack in the middle of that lentil field. He defended it single-handedly, struck down the Philistines, and once more, the Lord brought about a great victory.
Now, what is truly captivating about these verses is how vividly they anchor us in the raw, physical reality of the ancient world. You see, the text doesn't just give us a generic, "they were brave." No. It gives us visceral, exhaustion-filled details. a warrior's hand literally freezing to the hilt of his sword because he's been swinging it for so long, a man refusing to give up a basic simple patch of lentils to an invading army. It is incredibly raw. And crucially, while it highlights their immense, heroic human effort, the text consistently reminds us of the bigger picture. It was the Lord who ultimately brought about the victory.
Moving on to Section 3, the Well of Bethlehem.
Right in the middle of this intense military roster spanning verses 13 to 17, the text suddenly slows its pacing way down. It gives us this highly dramatic, deeply personal micro-story about these top commanders. Let's break down exactly what happens here step by step. So it's harvest time. David is hiding out in his stronghold at the cave of Adullam, which is a fortified cave system. Meanwhile, a band of Philistines is camped out in the valley of Rephaim near Jerusalem, and they've placed a military garrison right inside David's hometown of Bethlehem. David, who is likely exhausted and feeling a bit nostalgic, casually expresses this deep longing out loud. He says, "Oh, that someone would get me a drink of water from the well near the gate of Bethlehem." Well, hearing this, the three mighty men take it entirely upon themselves to fulfill his wish. They literally break right through the enemy Philistine lines, draw water from that specific well by the gate, and carry it all the way back to the cave just to give it to David.
But look closely at David's reaction in verses 16 and 17. When they hand him the water, he absolutely refuses to drink it. Instead, he pours it out on the ground as an offering to the Lord. He says, "Far be it from me, O Lord, to do this. Is it not the blood of men who went at the risk of their lives?" We really need to clarify exactly what David is doing here. He isn't rejecting their gift out of disrespect. It's actually the exact opposite. He reveres their sacrifice so deeply that he considers this water to be as sacred as their very blood. To him, drinking it would be treating their life-risking loyalty as something common or cheap, so he pours it out as a holy sacrifice to God. It's just a stunning, profound display of mutual devotion between a leader and his men.
Next is Section 4, Exploits of Benaniah.
Moving into verses 18 to 23, the text transitions over to a second tier of commanders. Now, these men were incredibly famous in their own right, but the text makes sure to clarify that they didn't quite attain the rank of the first three. We get detailed accounts of two men in particular, Abishai and Benaiah. First, we have Abishai, the brother of Joab. He was the chief of this next group. He lifted up his spear against 300 men and slew them, making him the most honorable among them and their captain. But then we get to Benaiah, the son of Jehoiada from Kabzeel. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the details the text provides here. They are absolutely wild. Listen to these specific exploits. First, he struck down 2 of Moab's best men. Second, he actually went down into a pit on a snowy day and killed a lion. And third, he went up against this massive Egyptian warrior. The Egyptian had this huge spear in his hand, but Benaiah, he only had a club. But I fought him, snatched the spear right out of the Egyptian's hand, and killed the giant man with his own weapon. Because of these incredible, almost cinematic acts of bravery, David promoted Benaiah and appointed him to be in charge of his personal bodyguard.
All right, Section 5, the 30 warriors.
Finally, in verses 24 through 39, the text zooms out. It moves from these highly detailed individual stories to a rapid-fire list of the broader network of David's loyal commanders. This group is commonly referred to in the text as the 30. Now, we aren't going to read every single name, but the text lists men like Asahel, who was Joab's brother, Elhanan from Bethlehem, Shammah the Harodite, Heliz the Poltite, Ira, Abiezer, and dozens more. What is truly important about reading through this long list of names is understanding the geography. These men came from all over the region. This roster honors the incredibly diverse origins and the absolute unified dedication of all these different individuals who left their hometowns to fight for David's kingdom.
As we reach the very end of this list in verse 39, the text gives us a final, specific tally. It plainly states, 37 in all. There were exactly 37 of these elite mighty men recorded in this official chapter.
But wait, there is a massive, undeniable textual detail hiding right here at the end. The 37th name, the very last name written in this chapter, is Uriah the Hittite. This is an incredibly poignant, almost tragic inclusion. If you know the earlier story in Samuel, Uriah the Hittite was the fiercely loyal soldier whom King David intentionally sent to the front lines to die. Why? To cover up his own terrible sin with Uriah's wife, Bathsheba. Placing Uriah's name as the capstone at the very bottom of this elite list of heroes is a profound narrative callback. It immortalizes the man David wronged, permanently honoring Uriah's unquestionable loyalty for all of history.
And that brings us to Section 6, Legacy and Key Takeaways. So, the crucial point is, what do we actually take away from all of this? We've walked through the entirety of Prophet Samuel 2, chapter 23. From the poetic last words to the final name on that military roster, what are the practical life lessons we can draw from this plain reading of the text to actually improve ourselves? Well, let's distill the key ideas. First, from David's opening oracle, we learn that true, just leadership brings light, clarity, and growth to those around it, and it absolutely must be rooted in a deep reverence for God. Second, looking at the mighty men, we see that extreme loyalty and bravery are the foundation of any great endeavor. David didn't build his kingdom alone, right? Third, that amazing story of the well teaches us to deeply honor the sacrifices of others. We should never ever take for granted the risks people take on our behalf, just like David poured out the water because it was simply too precious to consume. And finally, the meticulous listing of all 37 names shows us that every single contributor to a righteous cause is seen, valued, and permanently remembered.
And this brilliantly illustrates the final thought I want to leave you with today. When you look at the sheer dedication of men like Eleazar, Shammah, Benaiah, and Uriah, you really have to ask yourself, how will your actions and your loyalty be recorded in the final chapter of your story? What kind of legacy are you building right now? Thank you for learning with us. If this helped you understand the chapter better, like, subscribe, and join us for the next chapter.